Okay. I'm not surprised that now removed Chief Justice Gertrude Araba Saki Torkornoo had decided to file this judicial review application. I'm not surprised at all.
Why doesn't it surprise you?
The reason is simple. You see, Alfred, as young as I am, there are certain things that when you are advised and you decide to do otherwise, it goes against you. Look, in the midst of these petitions, two prominent Ghanaians said, look, if the Chief Justice wants to resign, she should be permitted to resign. I recall vividly, the argument was made. The Constitution says, and the Supreme Court has clarified the issue, that once an Article 146 process has commenced, you do not have the option of resigning. At that time, there was a strong push that, hey, Justice Torkornoo had worked High Court, Court of Appeal to Supreme Court. And therefore, that matter, for her service to this republic, she should be permitted to resign and take her emolument. So she can go. At least when she resigns, she is entitled to her benefits. Just when they were waiting for that, from nowhere, she decided to do a judicial process, somersault. I think today, she's come to the realization that she ought to have resigned instead of allowing the process to go through.
You said that was not on the table.
Please, I know, and for this privileged information, I cannot even name the people.
Amaba also came and said it.
Look, two prominent people.
And we supported it here. Remember, you and
I was opposed to it. You said, look, yes. It should be allowed, even though the Supreme Court, because what had happened was that there was a High Court judge who Article 146 process had started against him. Yeah. Then President Mills was in the process of putting the committee together. The CJ then, Georgina Wood, started the process. Then the judge, knowing that if that Article 146 committee concludes its work, he stands the risk of losing his entitlement, quickly tendered in his resignation. So the question was whether President Mills was bound to accept the resignation. And the Supreme Court interpreted the matter and said, once an Article 146 process had commenced, there is no option. If not, you defeat the very purpose of Article 146. But you see, we are back to this point because her ladyship, the Chief Justice, now removed. Options are completely gone. Completely gone. The options are gone. Let's look at the legal issues now. I've gone through the judicial review processes and the attachment. I spent yesterday reading through it. Now, if you look at the grounds of the judicial review, and if you look at the things and the reliefs that she is seeking, you come to one irresistible conclusion. An appeal of the Puaman-led committee and its work disguised as a judicial review.
It's appealing.
It's an appeal, but disguised as a judicial review application. But you see, as lawyers, we have the skill set to uncover and to unwrap these wraps that she had put on the processes. Because essentially what she's saying is that the Puaman-led committee had done its work, but I disagree with their findings and the conclusions reached and their recommendations. And for that matter, I want a High Court to have a second bite. That is not allowed by law.
After she has been removed.
Yes. That is not allowed by law. And the reason is simple. In the wisdom of the framers of the 1992 Constitution, they didn't want an Article 146 proceedings to be appealable. And so when they were creating the Constitution, what they did was that when it's a commission of inquiry, commission of inquiry under Article 284, you are permitted to appeal. So it says that a person dissatisfied with the findings of a commission of inquiry, like Brazil, Ghana at 50 or this, you have the right of appeal. So finality is not in the work of that committee. It can be judicially reviewed or through a high court intervention. So in this case, what you do is that you allow the high court when it comes to a commission of inquiry, but here you go to the court of appeal. And that is why for lawyers we say an appeal is a creature of statute.
Right.
There must be a statute that creates that right. Now, when she looked at the option, she realized that no, there is no right of appeal envisaged under Article 146. So, by legal ingenuity, try to come out with a judicial review, but to achieve the same end of an appeal. Because in an appeal, we say appeal is by way of rehearing. And so if you look at her relief, what she is seeking is to have a high court judge now sit and say, okay, the Puaman-led committee, you have done your work, but to my mind as a judge, you were not fair to Torkornoo. Basically, to have that high court judge now sit in judgment over the Puaman-led committee, that is unconstitutional. That is constitutional lawlessness. Complete constitutional lawlessness.
You describe this as
complete constitutional lawlessness and should not be entertained.
So she's accepting
let me tell you. If you look at grounds 1 and 2, reliefs 1, 2, 3, and 4, what she's doing is to say that the committee says I'm not fit and proper by reason of the findings of stated misbehavior. Right? However, to my mind, I am fit and proper to hold the office of Chief Justice. What you must understand is that under our Constitution, there is only one set of group or a group of people who can make that determination. Not even the Supreme Court. It is only the committee set up under Article 146. And so, in the year 1994, the Ghana Bar Association decided to test that fitness question in the Supreme Court in what is known as the Urban case. The Ghana Bar Association versus the Attorney General, popularly called the Urban case. What was it about? President General Rawlings had then made Urban the Chief Justice. The Ghana Bar Association quickly issued a writ at the Supreme Court. In that writ, all they were seeking to say is that Justice Urban does not meet the constitutional threshold of becoming a Chief Justice. What they wanted to do through the back door is to trigger Article 146 proceedings by using a writ of summons. Justice Kweku Addo and co. saw through the rules and said, hey, please. You are afraid of Article 146 proceedings. So essentially what you want to do is to use the writ action under Article 2 to basically achieve the same outcome. We will not permit you. And if you read the judgment of the Supreme Court in the Urban case, my Lord Justice Kweku had this to say. He said, look, as lawyers, as the creme de la creme of the legal profession, we expect better from you. And that, listen, the reason for Article 146 and its in-camera proceedings is to preserve and protect the independence of the judiciary and not turn an Article 146 proceedings into a theater, like it usually happens in the courtroom. Now, what essentially now removed Chief Justice is doing is that if she successfully triggers the jurisdiction of the judicial review jurisdiction of the High Court, essentially what she's doing is to put the Puaman Committee, which otherwise is supposed to be in camera, to now an open conversation. That is where the constitutional lawlessness is. Because now that she had filed, if you respond to it, you have to come and do a merit review of the work of the committee.
But you're essentially questioning the basis for her removal.
Exactly. And so the committee's work is supposed to be in camera. Now, immediately you put it out in the court. Court proceedings are not in camera proceedings.
To strengthen your argument, but the Supreme Court in the Derry case said after it's over, they should release it. No, it's broken.
No,
so
I'm coming. So the point that we all need to appreciate is that in the wisdom of the framers of the Constitution, they did not make the work of the committee under Article 146 a subject of judicial review. The judicial review powers envisaged either in CI 47 or the Constitution itself to the High Court does not include the workings of the Article 146 committee. And the policy rationale is to preserve the in-camera status of the work of the committee. Because you see, at this point, if she succeeds in her action in triggering the jurisdiction of the High Court, what it means is that the AG by law would have to file affidavit in opposition. And in that affidavit in opposition, depose to the fact that the committee's work and whatever were all fair. So what it means is that you have to bring the works of the committee before the judge. And
in fact, there's been calls that to the extent that the committee has finished and submitted the report.
Finality.
That report should be made public.
Yeah, the Supreme Court itself says so.
Look,
in the Derry case,
you see,
it says they are not against publication, and we are waiting for it. We must get those reports.
The danger,
we must.
See, I know my senior brother Martin Kwebu. Martin, when it comes to issues about legal matters, if you don't put a chain around him, he can run, for want of better word, run very rogue. and
to help our democracy.
Please. And stretch the law to a position that if we are not careful, we may have to rewrite the Constitution. And Kwebu has the tendency of rewriting the Constitution, using advocacy. But that said, what we should not allow in this circumstance is to permit a High Court to sit in judgment over an Article 146 committee disguised as judicial review. In the superior wisdom of the framers of the Constitution, that was never envisaged. I recall vividly, you remember Zachariah Nyimakan?
Yeah. The Willency constituency.
The Willency constituency matters. After that, Nyimakan appealed right up to the Court of Appeal. Because in that case, the Constitution is clear that, a petition, the High Court petition, should end at the Court of Appeal. Nyimakan wanted to test his, whatever you call it, by putting up an appeal further from the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court itself denied itself that jurisdiction. Yes, of course, the beautiful dissent by her ladyship of Akufo Addo was not enough to get the majority to side with her. Because even then, the majority were of the view that if the framers of the Constitution intended that there should be a further right of appeal relative to an election petition, parliamentary election petition hearing to the Supreme Court, the framers of the Constitution would have done same. I want to submit that with everything that has happened today, and the policy rationale as discussed in the Urban case, the High Court does not have jurisdiction to entertain this judicial review matter because it has the tendency of creating a constitutional chaos. One, because where in this particular case, the president had accepted the recommendations of the committee and has, on the basis of the recommendation, removed the Chief Justice under a warrant. And not only that, had proceeded to, as it were, appoint someone awaiting parliamentary vetting. A High Court intervention has the tendency, as it were, to bring chaos. And the Constitution should not, as it were, be manipulated in any way that results in constitutional recklessness and chaos. And so it's unfortunate that you have an application whose strength is like an ice cube in hell.
What do you mean by this latest application? Strength is like an ice cube in hell. Essentially, what? It has no
to melt.
No. I mean, you can imagine how well an ice cube will survive in hell.
You don't understand.
Yes.
You understand? It should just end here. It's a complete misadventure and should not be permitted. You see, it is not a platform for learning. Governance is a serious business. The framers of the Constitution intends order, not chaos.
But you would not also be against any process that is also sought to ensure that there is absolute clarity brought to this entire process. When the last application was put on this table, Kofi Bentil was then with us at
yes, I recall.
You were here as well.
Yes.
Indicated that we must not be against any process that would bring some level of clarity, not just for the former Chief Justice, but for our jurisprudence.
But there's no ambiguity.
She's asking questions that demand answers.
No. You see, it's self-serving.
This
completely self-serving.
Doesn't in any way serve the interest
completely self-serving. You see, what we should not run away from is that her ladyship, now removed Chief Justice, is not the first person to suffer under Article 146. No, not at all. Many in the past have gone through the rigor and the associated antecedents and consequences of Article 146 actions. She's not going to be the first and the last. In fact, it is in the public interest that even litigation must come to an end. And that is why the lawyers, they say sui generis, right?
Yes.
So Article 146 proceedings in itself is sui generis. It's unique for a purpose. And the uniqueness is to serve a role. If you permit this judicial review, which for me is an appeal disguised, the fear of the Supreme Court in the Urban case is what we'll be going back to. Where in this case, the High Court will now be hearing otherwise in-camera matter in the open court. That invitation ought to be declined.
Makubawa is on this, and especially because of the points that Ejujigamaku ended on.
Right.
That this process, if it proceeds and is heard, will just go against the constitutional provision of this entire process being in camera. The former Chief Justice is asking questions that goes to the heart of the reason behind her removal. Should the warrant of removal not bring an end to this matter?
I think we've noted on this table, Martin has also alluded to that. The Supreme Court is clear that the minute, there are two instances. One, if the president failed to, establish a prima facie case, in that instance, the in-camera-ness of the proceeding comes to an end. Also, when the committee concludes its work and submits its report, when that is done, the in-camera-ness also comes to an end. So I think it is a belated argument to say that the action before the High Court would in any way amount to a needless incursion into the in-camera-ness of the whole proceeding. In fact, the minute the Formal Committee submitted its report to the president, the basis of which the president acted, that in-camera-ness, the myth is broken. Now, and as Martin said, Ghanaians now have the right to know whatever happened, particularly the entire report. All right, the question we must ask ourselves is the Chief Justice, the removed Chief Justice, appealing the recommendation of the Article 146 Committee? I don't see that. In fact, I'm inclined to agree with Eduji when he said the judicial application, the judicial review application has a semblance of an appeal. In fact, I read the entire document and I looked at the relief. In fact, she's coming under a judicial review application. When I look at the reliefs are straightly judicial review reliefs. But I had issues with the grounds. In fact, the grounds, the way the grounds were couched amount to a tacit invitation to the High Court to, in fact, go through or to intervene by reviewing the substantive work of the committee.
That's why it's an appeal.
But you see, that is an issue with her lawyers. Because if you are coming for judicial review reliefs and you have grounds, some of which do not support the reliefs, I think that is their issue. But I've heard many argue that let me acknowledge, the Article 146 is genuine. In fact, it is unique, as Eduji hinted at. And but the argument that you cannot question the recommendation of the committee is disingenuous. Why? And this is my point. After the provisions of the 1992 Constitution, right? The provision must be read as a unified whole. In fact, they do not operate in isolation.
Right.
And the thing is that the Constitution is anchored on key principles, including justice, fairness, probity, and accountability. Therefore, any interpretation whatsoever that ignores these principles is dangerous and must be opposed by any well-meaning Ghanaian. Why am I saying this? Every Ghanaian, the minute the committee is done, you can question the manner the work was done. You can question it. And it must not have, the framers of the Constitution should not have stated it in Article 146 because the whole Constitution is a unified whole. So when you are reading, you must make sure that whatever committee is entrusted with work to do, like the Article 146, that work must meet the test of justice, fairness, probity, and accountability. On that basis, I've read, the removed Chief Justice has legitimate grounds to bring a judicial review application to interrogate. But we all know, the lawyers on this table know that judicial review application is circumscribed. When you are going for judicial review, you must not couch your grounds in the manner that look like an appeal. Particularly, and as Eduji said, appeal is a creature of statute. And per Article 146, there's no room for appeal. As for that, it's not open for debate. Nobody should argue about this. You can't appeal the recommendation of the committee. However, you can question if you have legitimate grounds, particularly when you feel that the procedure the committee adopted were not, were not in your favor or do not meet the test of the Constitution. You can question them. And she cited Articles 23 and 296. And I was hoping that maybe her grounds will be well couched to justify those provisions. And I have said, Alfred, these are matters that should be that should be done, worked on by her lawyers, her counsels. I'm not in the position to advise the counsel.
Okay.
But I think she has every legitimate ground to question the work of the committee. And any argument and any submission that there's no room for anybody to question it because the committee has done its work and the president has acted on it by reason of that, nothing should be done. I think it's disingenuous. Albert, I think if any young lady is listening to us, the work of the Chief Justice will not benefit her today, but it will benefit her tomorrow. Any young lawyer or woman listening to us.
Why do you go on that path?
No, do you know why?
What about the old ones?
Alfred, now the question is, Alfred, this is the question. People have addressed her as a perennial litigant. Alfred, the question is, must she put the brake on her litigation? I don't think so. The question I always ask is, has injustice in the system stopped? You remember the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his famous letter from the Birmingham jail, which he wrote on the 16th of April 1963. He said, any injustice anywhere is a threat to justice.
I think you are confusing politics and law. You see, you can have an advocacy based on policy, reform. That's permissible. To advocate that, for instance, maybe in the superior wisdom of the framers of the 1992 Constitution, and thankfully you have Kwesi Prempeh's committee still working. Maybe an additional clause should be provided in Article 146 to allow for persons dissatisfied with the work of the committee to possibly vindicate that right. That is politics.
That's appeal.
That is policy. But I'm saying that the Constitution structured now does not permit. And I'm saying that, yes, it's true. Everything conceivably can be litigated in our court. And that is when the Ghana Bar Association in 1994 decided that they would tweak the qualification to become a judge and to have the Supreme Court to pronounce on the fact that Aban was not fit. The court said, look, immediately we say Aban is not fit. What we have done is to conclude on an Article 146 proceedings. And so it's a clever way of getting us to do an Article 146 work using litigation or a writ and decline jurisdiction. The point I'm making is that, you see, in this particular instance, where the invitation, and look at, you yourself have problem with even the grounds. The two grounds.
That's an issue.
Because you see, judicial review, when you do judicial review, the principle of law is that you are not substituting your decision for the decision maker.
Of course, it's clear.
If you look at the Westbury formulation, 3 essential grounds: illegality, procedural impropriety, the issues of legitimate expectation and whether or not, or a breach of the rules of natural justice. So if you look at the Westbury formulation and you apply, it is either you are saying that there is a rule of law that the committee did not apply. 2, that you have a legitimate expectation and that was not, respected, or that there was procedural impropriety or there was a breach of the rules of natural justice. It is not for a high court to substitute. So immediately you bring the question of fairness. And that's what the committee did not meet that legal requirement. That becomes a problem. The court does not have the power to engage
in the jurisdiction of the High Court in this matter.
Completely. Foreclosed.
Key one, the thing is, quick one. The backdoor procedure that was flagged in the Aban case, as Eduji referred to, I don't think it's playing out in this matter.
Why is that?
I have said that when you look at the reliefs were couched in a tacit judicial review application reliefs. But I have faulted some of the grounds. And I think these are matters the lawyers should work on. But the thing is that, Alfred, on this table, what I am finding it difficult to accept is a submission by Eduji and some other people in the media that there's no way around the Article 146 to question, in fact, the procedure the committee adopted in arriving at its recommendation.
Show us the way, Bracco power.
I have said that the Constitution, when you are reading, you are just picking Article 146 and isolating it. And I'm saying that the Constitution as a political document, you should read it as a unified whole, thereby ensuring that no one provision operates uniquely or in isolation. You must get them in tandem. And I have noted that the Constitution is anchored on key principles. And those principles, if those principles are missing in any decision that is arrived at by any committee, established, properly so-called, established by the Constitution or an act of Parliament, any aggrieved individual can question the procedure. However, I have also noted, Alfred, and if you realize that appeal must clearly or should clearly have been given to you, the right to appeal should clearly have been given to you by the law. And I have said that Article 146 has no room for appeal. Be that as it may, you can question the procedure if only you have legitimate grounds. And I think the argument should not be pushed around or be peddled in the media that there's no way around it. That is, I see that as selective and cagey and narrow interpretation of the Constitution. And we must not, saddle ourselves with that. We must open up. I think
to be clear, did you say we can't question at all, or is the High Court? Because for the Supreme Court, you question. Yeah, the decisions show how we are questioning the processes.
And that's what I said, that you see, in terms of questioning, it's the High Court. It's foreclosed.
What is foreclosed?
So it can be done in the Supreme Court. I'm not hearing him saying that you can't question at all, but it's the venue.
The venue. No, the thing is that
let's not run amok. We have a specific matter before us, a judicial review. The High Court jurisdiction has been invoked, and I submit that the High Court jurisdiction is completely ousted.
So when they go, maybe they can.
Please, that is not a matter. It's not a matter for now.
Yes, I don't subscribe to that argument.
Okay,
I think legitimately the High Court has jurisdiction to hear a judicial review application.
Okay.
Particularly because we know that when it comes to matters...
that's not what we are fighting. We're saying this Article 146 matters she's raising. Are they for the High Court judge or for the Supreme Court? Nobody is saying...
No, I think for me, I think she's in the appropriate forum.
Okay, right.
She's in the appropriate forum. It is open. I understand, individuals like Eduji and Co in the media who have a different position. But the thing is that usually your argument is based on where you stand. And where you stand will also inform what you communicate. But so I read largely she is properly before the court. I have issues with some of the grounds. It is something the lawyers will have to work on.
Okay.
But I think she has every legitimate ground to question the procedure adopted, but not the conclusion of the committee.
Okay. Just quick one on this, the jurisdiction of the High Court. I don't think that there's a blanket statement shutting down or questioning the powers of the High Court, but with specific reference to this Article 146 issue. Does the High Court, from where you sit, have the jurisdiction to hear this matter before it, specific to this Article 146 work?
Oh, to be very honest with you, lawyers, we like to be guided generally by Supreme Court decisions, right? Because that's the final court. Unfortunately, on this particular one, I don't seem to remember how the Supreme Court has clarified which aspects the High Court can deal with, right? Yeah, so there's not much. Bracco Powers agrees that there's no decision that says the High Court can deal with this part and not that part. So now that she has entered, if the lawyers, for the Attorney General will raise the matter of jurisdiction, and when it is done, just like the other one, the removal itself. You see, Dr. Sremsai raised some preliminary some questions to be set down to the Supreme Court. So in the same way, in this case, that's likely to arise. then that one will be set down for the Supreme Court. Then the Supreme Court will show the way. That one, then we'll learn from it, because matters like this, naturally, if you ask me, as a lawyer, I can espouse a view. But because we've not developed the law that well, the Supreme Court may have a different view. Let's be patient about it. Well, as I've always stated, I wish we would get closure on this matter, right, far earlier. But it appears Justice Torkornoo is not willing to have closure. She wants to continue going and going. So let's grant her her right, right? Yeah, she has a right to challenge. So when they get in there, the matter of jurisdiction may be raised again for the Supreme Court to determine. And when the Supreme Court determines it, then we'll know. Whichever way, bottom line is, at the end of the day, she wants to hold the committee accountable. And that one, she has a right to. As for the accountability, it can never be denied. So whether it will be done in the High Court or Supreme Court, we don't know. But so accountability, yes.
After holding the commission accountable, then what happens? Will she be reinstated? I'm just asking. Is it possible that she can hold them accountable, and that would sort of override the decision that has been already taken to remove her? Is it possible? I'm asking you.
Why? That's it. Unless it's so egregious.
Because I'm asking myself.
Theoretically, unless it's so bad, what went on there is so bad that no human institution will countenance it, then that's how she can win. But with what we've seen, there are a few problems. I think, look, in all of this, what she has most going for her, in my estimation, is the failure of the president to give the reasons for the prima facie. Yes, that's that one.
That's the subject matter of the judiciary.
No, she's raised it. Hey, let's go.
Sina, if you look at relief,
I'm paraphrasing. Let me show you
the relief.
One of the let me show you why she's raised that one there. It will come to haunt us for years to come, because when that was done to Chachuchikata, we're up in arms that the judiciary didn't do well. They didn't do well, okay? They didn't do well because the Supreme Court itself, when Chachuchikata was not given the prima facie, the Supreme Court itself said the trial judge's failure to give the reasons for the prima facie ruling just shows bias, malice, thoughtlessness. Yes, after saying all that, at the end of the day, he said, but it's not sufficient to cancel the whole trial. So as for, and that's 2003, 2004, Chachuchikata's case. 2003, 2000. So the Supreme Court itself haven't set that standard that if you don't give reasons, you give way for people to think that you are biased, you are thoughtless, you are malicious. I thought that this one, we should have done it. So as for the failure to give Torkornoo the prima facie reasons, it's bad. It's bad in this process.
No,
but it is not sufficient.
Senior, with respect. No, but Senior, you see the reliefs.
Which one? No. And I'll justify. Okay, you read.
Yeah, so Senior,
hold on.
I listen there.
No, hold on. The specific reliefs, yes.
Please take note, so and so.
Yes.
For the following reliefs.
Yes.
A, an order of certiorari bringing up into this court for the purpose of being quashed and for quashing the proceedings of 15th of May 2025 and the entire proceedings and the outcome of the Article 146 set up to consider petitions to remove the applicant, chaired by Puama JSC. That's relief A. B, an order of certiorari bringing up into this court for the purpose of being quashed and for quashing each and all of the three reasons and grounds given. So grounds and reasons.
Yes. But if not, so when you read in, so now
and so if you go through all the reliefs, she had never questioned, for the purpose of this judicial review, the fact that the prima facie was without reason. In fact, she herself says reasons. Please, with respect. It's not yet. At least for this judicial review. Unless, of course, it's a different process. If it's a different process, that's fine.
Let me respond. Please, when you read it, she tells you that that is the foundation. We can get the paragraphs. So what you are reading is the top. It's in there. She says reliefs. Yes. So she's saying that, you see, in law, what she's saying is that in law, you can't put anything or nothing, it will collapse. McFoy versus UAC. So lawyers, so she's saying that there's, I read it, ADJ also read it. So she's saying that the relief is the final outcome. Why is she asking for the relief? The reason she's asking for, she says you have no foundation. So anything you put on it will collapse. That's what she's saying. There are several paragraphs where she says she was not given the reasons for the prima facie. So her case is that once she doesn't have the reasons for the prima facie, you can't even do the hearing. And I'm saying that one she won't win, because in the same Chatuchikata case, what they did was that they just berated the trial judge for not giving the reasons. But they said it's not sufficient to cancel the case to say, Chikata, because you were not giving reasons for prima facie, walk free. And that one was even a criminal trial, where Chikata's
liberty
excellent. So that one was a higher things were at stake, liberties, right? Personal liberties. Yeah, the Supreme Court said when Justice Henrietta Aban didn't give reasons for the prima facie, though it was bad, it was thoughtless, it was malicious, it showed bias, etc. But still, the fact that Chikata should open his case was a good decision. It should stand. And then ADG yourself, you've been citing the other case, 2017. Is it Asamoah?
Michael Asamoah.
But yes, so you also have it. So she will not win. But that one, it will come to haunt us for years to come. That if in 2003, 2004, we said failure to give reasons is bad, it's not good for our governance, why are we repeating that in 2025? That's a separate argument, but that's not sufficient for her to win the case.
Okay.
So let's go on. So now the thing is that, so
Sina,
when you
can I chip something? No, just chip something.
Unless that is on the permission of
Martin. Sina, with respect to enrich the conversation.
Yes.
You see, she grounds the reliefs, the 4 reliefs, on specific grounds.
Yes.
And the grounds start from Roman numeral 1
Yes.
to 10.
Yeah.
Each one of them, it is in respect. So, for instance, ground 1, that all of the alleged findings, and ground 4, recommendation of the committee set up by the president, not the prima facie. Roman numeral 2, the findings and recommendations of the committee. 3, the first alleged finding and recommendation. 4, the first alleged finding and recommendation of the Puaman. So throughout, the attack is the Puaman committee. The findings and recommendations. Findings and recommendations. In fact, there is no specific instance that she even brings up the issue of the prima facie determination by the president and the Council of State. And I am making
several paragraphs. The
affidavit is there.
Judicial we are doing law with respect to you. A judicial review has reliefs and grounds.
You've had your so let's go. Look, even before paragraph 94, before paragraph 50, she raised it. But look, another lawyer who has read it says we should start with 94. So let's go to 94 and come. And I'll tell you that before 50, I read it. So let's go straight to 94.
So 94, where exactly are you looking at?
94, I'm just scrolling. Don't say she didn't
it's 94. Just look at
it's 94.
That the proceedings, the refusal to give me a copy of the alleged prima facie determination, that should have determined what case I was to answer in the proceedings. And the current refusal to also give me a copy of the alleged report allegedly recommending my removal from office as Chief Justice. And the alleged reasons communicated by the Secretary of the President as the reasons given by the Puaman Committee for recommending my removal as Chief Justice from office show a reckless disregard for my rights as a citizen to procedural and substantive justice. And a total lack of any reasons for removing me from office as Chief Justice found in the petitions referred for hearing, and an insistence on presenting any sham excuse for removing me from office while hiding behind the veil of in-camera proceedings, and a refusal to give me a copy of the report as if I do not merit the minimum humane treatment of even being given a copy of the record explaining the reasons for taking my rights and entitlement for me. Yeah. So after that's the paragraph.
And before that, even before paragraph 50.
Martin,
but she has said that.
Martin, can I quickly? Can I just clarify a few things? Let me clarify. You see, when you do a judicial review application, you look for two things, two substantive things, the reliefs and the grounds. The affidavit provides the factual matrices. At this point, what the court is called upon is to give you something, and that is what the relief does. The grounds provides the legal basis why you are seeking for those reliefs.
Oh, yes. So that
and the grounds, Senior, can you point out where in any of the 10 grounds formulated that she challenges the prima facie determination? If you do that, I would yield to you.
So, perfect. Now let's go.
Help me out.
Let's start. Paragraph 34.
No, reliefs. I say reliefs and the grounds.
So when I get to the grounds, I'll show you where she said there's an aberration of Article 19, Clause 13 and 23. That's what she's referring to. That she's not had proper justice. 19, 13, and then 23. You see, let's get this. The fact, I've been very clear that the removal is correct.
No, I'm not even disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that we should put the law.
View. Even if the Supreme Court, this is what I'll say. Even if I went to the Supreme Court, this is what I'll say.
I don't disagree with you.
Of a removal, I support it 200%. Okay, it's just that the process you couldn't have gotten 100%. Look, if you want to understand this thing. All of us seated here, even including the professors, how many times when you were in university did you write exams and you got 100%? You won't get 100. So that is the principle we are showing, that the little things that went wrong. But we are not saying it's a failure. It's just to show that the committee couldn't have, the president didn't get 100% in the process. And that one we have the right to show, because it's not good if in 2003, 2004, the Supreme Court said if you don't give reasons, you appear biased, you appear thoughtless, you appear malicious. We shouldn't do that more than 25 years on. We shouldn't do that. That's the point I'm making. Okay. But it doesn't mean her removal is correct. No, that one, even if I was called in the Supreme Court, I'm sure I can justify my position that they themselves said it. And so today, you won't find the Supreme Court to say failure to give Torkornoo the prima facie ruling is good. The Supreme Court would never be able to do that, considering their own decision in the Chachu Chikata case. And the whole nation was behind Chachu, saying that, why did the trial judge fail to give Chachu Chikata reasons for saying he should open his defense? So if more than 20 years ago, the whole nation was supporting Chachu Chikata and how can it be right now, more than 20 years on, that, failure to give Torkornoo reasons is kosher? We can't do that. We will not do that. Even the Supreme Court itself cannot do that.
Cannot do what exactly?
Cannot say that failure to give Torkornoo reasons is good. That's the point I'm making.
Senior, once again, the injunction application, read my Lord Justice Tanko's view, and let me read it. In the injunction application, no, please, can I read?
Okay,
hold on. The ruling of Justice Tanko.
Yes.
On the injunction, she raised the specific issue of she not being given the reason for the prima facie. And this is how my Lord Justice Tanko, canvassing all your grounds. He said, quote, the next ground on which the applicant invites the court to restrain the committee is that the prima facie determination was not judicious, as it was rendered without reasons. I have cautioned myself against prejudicing the substantive relief sought in the action. However, it is not in doubt. The applicant herself has acknowledged the existence of a prima facie determination. She herself has acknowledged the existence of a prima facie determination, however described. Then he proceeds. Whether the form or content of that determination rendered it a nullity due to the alleged absence of reasoning is a matter to be determined at the substantive matter. But I'm saying in this matter, that's not what she had raised. This is the injunction matter. You know it. I don't have a problem. If you are saying that going forward, we should add that to what we do. It's a different matter.
I think that you see,
it's not part of the ground.
Responding to an issue that he raised.
Yes, so you reinforce what I've said.
I don't think so.
You see, I told that.
You wanted to make it, no, you wanted to make it look like it was part of the judicial review.
He couldn't have said the figure is correct. He says it falls to be determined. Yes.
Read the whole thing.
So now let's go to 34. 34 says that my position is that having been directed to hear 3 petitions on 1 warrant, following 1 purported and yet to be given prima facie determination of the 3 decisions, the committee could not unilaterally determine that its mandate was complete, blah, blah. I told you, there are at least 3 paragraphs. That's 34.
But you see, you are reading affidavit as grounds. How can you do that?
I'm going, you haven't noted that.
No, but how can you do that?
Infelicity of counsel.
That, no, senior, when you formulate grounds of a judicial review, and you give relief that you are seeking based on the formulated ground.
Yes.
You cannot use an affidavit to substitute for a ground.
You can do
to explain.
So
I don't think we'll settle this on this matter.
Yes, I mean, we can.
I don't think we'll settle
where let me continue. Where APG is coming from, he is talking about infelicity of language or infelicity of the language of counsel, and that place is a slippery slope. We all make mistakes. Look, some of the cases we take to court, you know, in a rush, sometimes you write certain things, no leaving court.
I don't think you blame the lawyers.
Look, things happen there. You look at this and say, I really did I write this, you look at the grammar, the syntax. So please, we are looking at the substance. Once the court finds, and I told you that before paragraph 50, I noted it. You see, I've read 34 to you. There are 2 other places she complained about the prima facie. It's the kernel of Torkornoo's case. I'm telling you,
come from different angles.
It's the kernel of Torkornoo's case, and that one there, she can beat it for 100 years to come, and she'll be right. We'll be supporting her just as we're supporting the Chakata case. We will be supporting it so that next time the system will do better. Because look, even Nebuchadnezzar, Akufo Addo, he brought out his ruling. Okujeto said that this I didn't say so.
No, let's not dwell on. You could have said it without necessarily referring to it.
So let's make it right. Kweku has a petition for the removal of the same Torkornoo. Okujeto came on air and said he wrote the prima facie ruling. He wrote it very long, copious. Okujeto, lawyer Okujeto, he said he wrote it and Akufo Addo signed. So we too, you have many lawyers in the NDC. This could have been done.
What?
Writing the prima facie ruling for President Mahama to sign.
I find it extremely uncomfortable when, with respect, an impression is created that the absence of a prima facie, should I say, a reason.
Yes.
Prima facie means there was none. At least I just showed you where in the judgment of the court, the ruling by His Lordship Justice Tanko, he says that there is no judicial pronouncement or judicial authority to say that once you do that, the work of the committee is what? Is a nullity. If the work of the committee is not a nullity, and the committee had proceeded, not only that, giving her the right to be heard, appeared with her lawyers, it had gone through the motions, come to the conclusion, and recommended her removal. Why are we going back to this belated? This can be the questions of. It can be the questions of reform. It can be the question of reform.
Like 3 times.
It should be a question of reform.
So now we've shown you the
If you want reform, say it. But to try to.
Hold on.
The process couldn't have been 100%. That one will say it loud and clear. The process of the Puaman committee, it's not 100%. That one, nobody can stop us from.
Was the prima facie part of the work of the Puaman committee? No.
She's saying that so the committee should have said, Madam, if you don't have the prima facie, then we will wait. Let's
give you the opportunity.
Yes, please. That one, nobody can gag us. The fact that we support the removal doesn't mean we support everything willy-nilly. Because tomorrow, it could be me. Tomorrow they say, because you just thought that the grounds are strong. You see, let's not make a mistake. As for the grounds for her removal, they are very strong. Very, very justified. 150%. Or like 200%. But as for the process, the prima facie, I'll be consistent. Exactly. The failure to give a prima facie is not kosher. It's not on. Let's not repeat that next time. Now, let's go on. So, you have shown paragraph 94, 30, is it 34 I read? The one we read. There are two other paragraphs. Yesterday, I remember reading them before paragraph 50. You see two other ones. Now, let's answer you when you said the grounds. Where in the grounds? Do you see the grounds? The ones talking about violation of article, look at 8. The entire proceedings and grounds of the said Kwame Committee for removal of the Chief Justice from office are a violation of the applicant's constitutional rights contained in Article 19(3) and 23. That is it. So she's saying...
Who determined the prima facie? Whose responsibility? Assuming
is the president. So she's saying that when she didn't get it, she's saying
I just read what she read.
Yes, she's saying that when she didn't get it, and you, the committee, you were constituted, you were to ask the president to bring it forth, let her see, and then you, the committee, would also see. So that one, let's not take it. The fact that the removal is correct doesn't mean everything was correct, because we don't want this thing to repeat itself again.
So these are for reforms.
Thank you.
Let it clear. These are for reforms, but it does not in any way undermine what has been done.
It does a certain extent, but not sufficient to remove it. Did you get the point? It undermines the process a bit, but it doesn't meet the threshold to say that the removal is illegal. Just as in the Chachichikata case.
These are policy issues.
No, it's not policy. It undermines the process a bit. But in the Chachichikata case, the Supreme Court said, when Justice Abban Henrietta didn't give you the reasons for saying you should open your defense, it was thoughtless, it was malicious, etc. But it's not sufficient to say Chachichikata walk free. So in the same way, Torkornoo is saying that when the committee didn't help her to get the prima facie ruling, they failed. They couldn't have built anything. And we are saying, no, she's wrong. She's wrong. The grounds are good enough to remove her. But that failure to give the prima facie, please, let this be the last time. We can't do this. 20 years, 2003, this is 2025. So about 22 years on, we are not learning. What does it take to write a prima facie rule? Okudzeto wrote one for Akufo Addo, and he signed. So NDC lawyers, and they more than 200, maybe it's a small number. You could have gotten one lawyer to write it quickly, and then President Mahama signs.
Thanks for watching. Like and share the video. You can also drop your comment. Please don't forget to subscribe. Click on the bell to turn on the notification.